So today we're going to start learning some of the basic shading skills. We're going to introduce shading by creating a value scale today and learning how to build a range of values moving all the way from pure white to the darkest value that a graphite pencil can go. So what you'll need is your sketchbook, and you're going to open your sketchbook up to where it is turned in landscape format, meaning it is wider across than it is tall, and it should be a 9 by 12, so you should have it 12 inches across your page. The other thing that you will need is a ruler and a regular wooden pencil. This is not a good assignment to complete using a mechanical pencil because some of the shading techniques that I'm going to show you requires you to not use just the point of the lead, but also shading with the side of the lead too, which is something you can't really do with a mechanical pencil. So the first thing that I'd like for you to do today is label the top of your page in the middle as a value scale. And you can put your name at the top if you would like, or later on when you turn this in, you can add your artist signature to it. Now to draw out our value scale, the first thing I'd like for you to do is to take your ruler and come down just a little ways from your title, and we will sort of center it. We're gonna make this 10 inches across, and I'm going to sort of guesstimate where I have some extra room on the left and right side. And I want to find a nice, true horizontal line. I don't want this to be tilted at all. I want it nice and straight across. So a lot of times I like to stand above my work and look down directly on it rather than sitting in a chair. This gives me a better perspective of what a true, straight horizontal line looks like. And what I'm going to do is start at my 0 by making a little small tick mark and come across to my 10 and make a little tick mark there as well. And I will connect those all the way across. Now we're going to be dividing this up into 10 even little squares. So at each 1 inch increment, I want you to put another very small tick mark. And one very good tip that I can give you is to make sure that when you're making a mark on your ruler, keep your head directly above that part of the ruler where you're making a mark. That way you can be really sure that it's exactly on the 1 inch line. And as you move down the ruler, slide your head and body along with you. That way each time you're making sure that you're making your mark directly in line with the ruler perfectly. So here's what your drawing should look like so far. We have our 10 inch section with a little tiny tick mark at each 1 inch increment. So the next thing that we're going to do is come to the side and turn our ruler vertically, and I'm going to match a whole inch up along this top line and finding a nice true vertical. I like to compare the edge of my ruler to the edge of my paper to make sure it's straight and it's not tilted or leaning. And you want to make a line that is 1 inch tall on that side, and make sure that you stay exactly at that 1 inch increment. We're working on measuring very precisely with a ruler, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Once you've dropped down on both sides, we are then going to connect these together and start at the 0 to the 10. And hopefully if you've measured everything correctly, the 0 and the 10 should match up perfectly, and you can bring this line all the way across. And then I'm going to repeat my tick marks across the bottom, so at each 1 inch increment. Now I always tell my students it's very important that you measure at the top and the bottom to put your tick marks, because that way it's going to be easier to make sure that your next lines are all straight. So now I'm just going to connect those all the way across my value scale. Now across the top, I'm going to label these from 1 to 10. So now to start our value scale, The value 1, we are going to leave that area solid white, just the white of the paper, so we won't be shading anything in this square. But we're going to instead start all the way down here at value 10. And value 10 is going to represent the darkest value that the pencil you're using can go. Now, some pencils are naturally darker than other pencils depending on the kind of lead that you have. So for this assignment today, I want you to choose just one pencil to work with and keep with that one pencil. So to show you what we're going to be doing, I'm going to practice this first on a scrap sheet of paper. This is just a sticky note, but you can use notebook paper, white printer paper, whatever you have. But just to kind of show you, most of the time when people start shading, one of the common problems that I see is they'll start shading like this, and it tends to look really streaky, and it doesn't look very smooth. And one of the reasons for that is because people tend to have uneven pencil pressure, and it may fluctuate as you're shading. Another common problem that people have when they're shading with lines like this is instead of shading very smooth with even pencil pressure and bringing that pencil back slowly enough, they bring it back too fast and they leave little gaps. And so then they try to fill it back in, and it's never going to be as smooth as what it could be. So instead of shading with lines today, I want us to practice a different type of shading. So this is going to be a new little experiment for you. And the reason why I want us to practice with this technique is because it's going to start to build your fine motor skills and those little tiny muscles in your hands and let you get really good at very fine, detailed, technical skills. So instead of shading with lines, what we're going to do is shade with little tiny circles. And this is a very particular technique that's going to build your art skills. So what I want you to do is find a natural pencil grip on your pencil, one that feels really comfortable to you. And I want you to, on a scrap sheet of paper, make some squiggles and wear down a little flat area on your pencil. That way it's not a sharp line, but instead of it's sort of a flattened, dull line. That's what we're looking for. And once you have that and you don't change the grip on your pencil, every time you go to make a mark, you're gonna have a very, very smooth shading mark. And instead of shading with lines, we are going to shade with a series of very, very small overlapping circles. And you can see that by shading this way, it's going to develop a very, very smooth, nice, even surface on your piece of paper. So notice I'm kind of going in lots of different directions, filling in that area, overlapping all of those circles. I'm not making big circles, I'm not making ovals, and I'm not shading in perfect little rows either. Sometimes if you shade in rows like this, those rows become visible when you use those little circles. Instead, you want them to go in lots of different directions and kind of moving around, always overlapping. And that's going to give you a really nice shading. So to start, I want you to begin on the value 10, and we're going to see how dark your pencil can go. So as you begin the shading process, rule number 1, make sure that you're using those little tiny circles to build up the layers of value. And rule number 2, also make sure that you're filling the entire square edge to edge. You want it one consistent value. Once you've finished value 10, I then want you to find a midpoint on value 5 or 6 to see what you think the middle value would look like on this value scale. And then continue to find the midpoints with value 8 and then 9 and 7. One very important rule that I want to also share with you for this assignment is to make sure that you do not smudge in any way on this project. You want to let the pencil do the work because that's what's going to develop those fine motor skills in your hand. Now, another tip that I can give you is in case you accidentally go too dark, you can use an eraser to lightly tap that area to lift up some of the value. Rather than scrubbing it with an eraser, this is going to be more gentle on your surface. Now, when you get ready to start the lighter values, Change your pencil grip by sliding your hand to the back of the pencil. And then you can readjust and make some scribbles to re-flatten that bottom edge of your pencil. Holding your pencil this far back allows you to shade with much lighter values because your hand isn't at the front pushing down as heavily on the front edge of your lead. Now, if you want to check your work once you have all your values filled in, hold your hands and compare just 2 values at a time and walk your way up that value scale. This will let you check to see if your values are each distinct and different, or if they're the same, like 4 and 5, or if they're even too far apart with too much of a values jump. You want to have nice, even value steps as you move up this value scale. Now, once you've done that, you can go back through and make really small, very subtle adjustments, so that way each value is truly unique. Another great tip is to keep a scrap piece of paper underneath your hand while you're working. That way you can avoid smudging and smearing your squares. So just keep making those very small adjustments to get each value just right, and be really patient. Take your time on this part because this is the step and the stage that really is going to make your value scale excellent versus just okay. So really spend some time here making those small adjustments until you're really happy with the finished product.